Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Now, on the last segment, I started showing you a book for tin whistles. It was made for children, for tin whistles, and I showed you tin whistles and so forth. I'm going to continue with that today. Remember the tin whistle? I'll just do a quick review here. They come in different sizes, they come in different shapes. This is a C, which is a little bigger than the D that I showed you before. And here is a B flat, which is a little bigger still. So you can see the basic ranges of them. And I've been using a D penny whistle because of the fact that this book is written for an instrument in the key of D, but as far as the fingerings are concerned, it would be about the same. And I also showed you, if you remember, my low D penny whistle, which is the largest that they make. And the finger stretchers are quite large. It's got a beautiful tone, it plays wonderfully well, but you may have trouble with it because the stretches of the fingers are really kind of hard if you have any trouble with your hands at all. So I just want to kind of review that. The other instruments, I don't know if I showed you, this is a Clark's instrument, and it has a wooden piece on the mouthpiece. It's still a Fipple mouthpiece, and it's a conical because it comes to a point. I don't know if I showed that to you last time. I happen to have it with me. There's a little design on the front. They're like little diamonds. I don't know if you can see that or not. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the way that it plays. Okay, thanks, Rick. So at any rate, they're all styled similar to the penny whistles. They are kind of like a tin whistle or a penny whistle. But getting back to the music, as I've been showing you on the charts, I switched the page here so you can see. We discussed the time signature, the key signature. There are a couple of other things here. This here, I showed you before, was all 4/4 time. Now this is 3/4 time. That means this is 3 beats to the measure. 3 beats, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's like a waltz tempo. And then the 4 on the bottom stands for, as I explained before, a quarter note. The quarter note gets 1 beat. So the number on top is how many beats to the measure. The number on the bottom is what kind of a note gets 1 beat. Since there's a 4 here, it is a quarter note. And you'll notice if you were to play this, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, they're all quarter notes. Another thing I want to point out to you is this little tiny, it looks like an apostrophe or it looks like a comma. It looks like a comma. There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, here, and here. Those are called breath marks. Breath marks is where it's handy to take a breath there. Now, obviously, if you're running out of breath, you're not going to wait that long. But sometimes you can even play past it and you don't need to have a breath there. You know, if the more you play and the stronger you get, the longer you can play without taking a breath. But what a lot of music does, not all music, but a lot of music does, is put in these little marks that look like commas. And what they are breath marks, handy for you to have, to know where you can take your next breath. If you're doing fine, it's still handy to take a breath there because it's a good pause and a good place to do it. Now, I want to go into down here where it says first and second endings. You have sometimes like a little bracket toward the end of a song. There's one here and there's one here. This one has a 1 in it and this one has a 2 in it. That's called the first and second ending. And you also have here repeat marks. These repeat marks are like 2 little dots. You have them here and here. Now what this means is this. When you play it and you go through and you play that first ending. You get to that repeat mark. And then you go back to the beginning, or wherever the repeat marks tell you. There's no repeat marks up here, but you go back to the beginning because there's no other place that you can go. If there was a repeat mark here, you'd go back there, but there's no repeat mark. So from here, you go back to the beginning, you play it again, and when you come to this one, you skipped it because you played it already the first time around. This is your second time around, so you skip that and you play the second ending instead. And you'll notice that there's a heavy black line here. That tells you that that's the end of the song. That's one way that you know that it's the end of the song. And I want to point out, this here is a rest. It's a quarter rest. Just like these are quarter notes, this is a quarter rest. And I know this, if you notice there's like a little whitish area in the middle of the note, I don't know if you can see it. For this type of book, what they've done is they put the note in the note itself. They've marked what the note is. Like here, it'll say A inside of the note, just so you know you're playing A. And they would put C in this one here in C sharp, because that's what you're playing. Notice there's an F sharp here and a C sharp. Every time you play an F, that's going to be sharp because the sharp is in the key signature. Every time you play a C, like you have a C here, you're going to sharp it. They don't have to mark it every time it comes up because you already have it in the key signature. If you have it in the key signature, it doesn't have to be marked. You know every F is going to be sharp. You're going to know every C is going to be sharp. It's in the key of D and it has those two sharps. This sharp is on the C, on the space for C. This sharp is on the line for F. So whenever those notes appear, you're going to automatically sharpen them. Now there is a way not to do that, but unless it's marked a natural, if you had a natural, then you know you wouldn't play it sharp, and that would be called an accidental. But at any rate, key signature, time signature, breath mark, these are the measure lines, bar lines, I'm sorry, and this is the first ending. You play that the first time around. You see the repeat signs, those two double dots. You go back to the beginning. You play it again. You skip that first ending because you've played it once. You play this instead, and that ends the song. So that's the first ending, and that's the second ending. It's not too unusual to get music marked first and second endings. Sometimes in more complicated music, you can have third and fourth endings, but we're not going to be going into anything like that here. Now, I guess I'll skip this page. Now, this page here, you'll notice that this is a dotted half. Now, that's important. When you see a dot in music, it means something important. It's not just the end of a sentence like you have when you're reading. The dot means that that note is worth half of what its original value is. This is a half note. This is a half note. Notice that the stem here is down and the stem here is up. It makes no difference. The only reason that this stem is up is that it's a lower note. And if you put the stem down, it's going to be hard to read. The reason that this stem is down is the fact that it's up high enough that when you read it, it's easier to read than if you had the stem going up. So it's all a case of convenience and making easier to read. But I'm concerned now with the dot. The dot means that you add a half a value to that note. Now, the half note is generally speaking worth 2 beats. If the half note is worth 2 beats, you add another half of it, that would be 1 beat. That dot signifies that that's 1 beat more. So that turns out to be a 3-beat note. That's exactly the same as this over here. This is a half note, and a half of a half is a quarter. So they put the quarter down, and it's the same. It's 3 beats. That third beat is the same as that dot. It means the same thing. You can write music in different ways. The other thing that I want to tell you about is this little archway. This is called a hold. Sometimes it's called a tie. You just play that as if it's one note. You play the 2 and you add 1 extra beat. You don't tongue it. You tongue the first note and you add it to the first note, making the first note worth 3 beats instead of 2 beats, or like a half and a quarter. Put it together and it adds 3 beats. That's exactly the same thing as this. This note is worth 3 beats because it's a half note plus a dot. The dot means it's half more than what it would be if it didn't have the dot there, so that becomes 3 beats. This is a half note, and instead of a dot, they add the half note or the quarter note, and it becomes 3 beats. It's exactly the same thing. It's just exactly the same. You're just doing it a little different. When you have a tie or a hold, you hold the note together, and you don't tongue that second note. You play it as if it was one note. So you would count, if you're playing it, 1, 2, 3, and play it for 3 beats, and this is exactly the same. It's a half note with a dot. It equals 3 beats because 1 beat is half of 2, and you add that 1 to the half note, and you still get your 3 beats, and you play it as 3 beats. Okay, so that needs to be clear to you. And then here, it just shows you the note and what the note is. B, A, G, and this is D, A, B, G. Now, sometimes when I'm teaching students, I'll write out what the notes are, and sometimes I won't. As you get to play more and more, you don't need to have it done, and it usually is not done on regular music. Okay, so the other thing I want to show you, and I'm going to just put it over here. Here is a dotted half note. So that is going to be 3 beats. That would be the same thing as if there was a whole note there. Supposing I wanted to write a whole note. A whole note is just a circle. It would still be worth 3 beats because a whole note is worth whatever the time signature says that it's worth. And here you have 3, 4 time. So if I wrote a whole note in, that would be 3 beats. If I write a dotted half note, it's 3 beats. If I took 3/4 notes and put them all together with a tie, that would still be 3 beats. You see, you could do it in different ways. This is a rest. This is a quarter note rest. This is the way it looks at. When I write it down, I usually just make a little squiggle mark. That's the way everybody does it because it's very difficult to write that exactly as it is. But that's a rest. That's a quarter rest. This is a quarter rest. This is a repeat sign right here. So where do you go for the repeat? Since there are no other repeat signs in the song, you go back to the beginning. If there were a repeat sign in the song, supposing there was a repeat sign right here, you'd go back to that and play that part over again. But since there's no repeat signs, you go back to the beginning. So let me flip this over and see if there's something here that I want you to catch. I think I've basically gone over it 3, 4 time. This would, if I had a whole note here and I put the whole note in, these are all dotted halves, and this is a common way to do 3 beats. But I could put a whole note in every one of them and have only the whole note, no dots, no half notes, just whole notes. They still would be worth 3 beats to the measure because a whole note is worth whatever the time signature says. And I guess I've heard said that so many times, you're probably sick of it now. Now, let's see. Let's count, just to count some music. This is 4/4 time. All right, 4/4 time. It's in the key of D. Here's the treble clef. Most instruments that we play in here are treble clef instruments. These are the 2 sharps, F sharp, C sharp. That means whenever I play an F, it's going to be sharp, and whenever I play a C, it's going to be sharp. And since it's 4/4 time, there are 4 beats to each measure. Now, here's an interesting thing. 1, 2, 3. Where's the fourth beat? The fourth beat is going to be here. You don't play it together, but this is one way that people have of writing music. This is going to be 3 beats. Why? I mean, this is going to be 4 beats because it's a whole note. And it's worth what the time signature says, so that's going to be worth 4 beats. That is tied to this note here. So even though that's worth 4 beats and it goes across the measure, you would play it for 5 beats because you're not going to tongue this because it's held together to that. So as you're counting it in your mind, you're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and you're kind of playing it all as one note, even though it's 2, but they're tied together. And this is your breath mark. This is a good place to breathe. And you still count this in your mind. This is still 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, another whole note, 4 beats. It's tied to this, so I think that's a little told. Well, maybe it isn't. I'm not sure about that. But you take a breath here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's a half beat, 2 beats. Here's a half beat, 2 beats. This is 2 beats. This is 2 beats. This is your whole note again. And it is tied here. From here, this is tied. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 3 beats because it's a dotted half. This is the 4th beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 because this is 3 beats because it's a dotted half. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a quarter rest. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 2 half notes together is 4 beats. These 2 half notes are 4 beats. This is a whole note that's worth 4 beats. This is just 1 beat. Why 1 beat? It balances out the 3 beats on this part of it. So if you're not playing them together, so even though really technically they're not together, but mathematically they usually try to balance it out so there's so many beats in each measure unless they change the signature, and they haven't. So here's 1 beat and 2, 3, 4. That's the 4, and together you make another 4 beat measure. Now this one here is the key. Let's see, I want to make sure I can get that right here. This is the key of G. How do I know it's the key of G? It has just 1 sharp. Just 1 sharp is the key of G. So your key signature is in the key of G. I'll show you later on how that gets to be that way, and then it'll make more sense to you. But for now, just remember that 1 sharp is the key of G. 4, 4 time, 4 beats to a measure, a quarter note gets 1 beat, and you're going to find the same thing I pointed out to you before. 2, this is 1, 2. Where would the other 2 be? On the last measure, a half note is 2 that balances it out, and so you have 4 when you add them together. Quarter note gets 1 beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This you hold for 6 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. There's a tie. This is worth 2 beats. This is worth 4 beats. So when you play it, you're actually tongue that note and you're going to hold it for 6 beats, even though you're actually playing 2 notes. You're just holding one to the other. But you count it, 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives you the 4 beats here, and this whole note gives you the 4 beats there. And so you go along and you have 4 beats to the measure. The same thing happens here. And it goes through to the end of the piece. There's no repeat signs. This is your double, what's called the double ending line, the double line. That signifies that's the end of the piece. Now, I don't know if all music has that, but most music does actually have it. Now, let me pull this over here. And Rick, you may have to tell me the time. I forgot to start my clock, so I don't know how much time I've got left. Tell me when we get too close. Whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes. Eighth notes has a flag on them. The body of the note, the stem, and here is a line across from these four. All of these four are considered to be eighth notes because there is a line that runs all the way through, and it acts as a flag. These little things here are flags. This acts as a flag for all of those four beats, for all of those four eighth notes. Now for the rest, the whole rest hangs down, as I said before. The half rest goes up. So this is a 4-beat rest. This is a 2-beat rest. This is a 2-beat rest. So you get your 4 beats that way if you want 4 beats to a measure. These are a quarter rests. They're like a quarter note. They're 1 beat rest. And these are eighth rests. They look like a little ball on one side and then a little slash down. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and they are eighth beat rests. These are eighth notes here, and those would be the eighth beat rest if you weren't playing any music. Here's a repeat sign here, and you have different songs. These are exercises. This is a 2-4. That means there are 2 beats to a measure. 2 beats to a measure, and a quarter note gets 1 beat. So 2/8 makes a quarter. This is going to be 1 beat, 2 beat, and this is going to be 1 beat, and this is the second beat. You see, the second beat is a quarter note. The first are 2/8, but 2/8 makes a quarter. And remember, there are only 2 beats to the measure. So 1 beat, 2 beat, 1 beat, 2 beat, 1 beat, 2 beat, 1 beat, and there's a quarter for the second beat. And you have your eighth, you have your repeat sign there. Now the book does do a really remarkable job in showing some things. And one thing, and I'm not sure how close I am to the end of time, but this I need to show you. Here are a group of eighth notes. This is 3-beat, 3/4 time, 3 beats to a measure. A 4th note gets 1 beat. Now, here's your 1 beat that they start the song with. It's actually an actual song. And it's an actual song. So this is 1 beat. And where are the other for the 3? Right here in the DC. This is 1 beat, and this is 1 beat. Now, I want to describe something. This DC is important. You get it in some music, and this fine is important. The fine is spelled F-I-N-E, like fine, but it's not pronounced that way in music. It's fine. This DC tells you to go back to the beginning of the piece. Whenever you see a DC at the end of a piece, it means go back to the beginning. And you play it until you get to the fine. And the fine is the end of the song. So when you're playing it, you play this, you play this. You don't pay attention to it the first time around, but it's there. And then you've played this. And when you get to this, you see DC al fine. DC al fine means go back to the beginning, and you play this, and you play this, and then when you get to the fine, that's the end of the song. And you have the double line here, the double measure line here, that tells you also that it's the end of the song. When you have a DC, always go back to the beginning of the song, and there will be at some point something that's called fine, and that's where the end of the song is. Now, if it were a DS, it would mean go back to the sign. But there is no sign. The DC always means go back to the beginning. There is a sign for the DS. So play this. Here's 1 beat. This is 3/4 time. Quarter note gets 1 beat. This is a D. Now remember, this is 2 sharps. It's in the key of D. That F is sharp. That means these Fs, even though they're not on that F line, they're also Fs. They get sharped as well. When you have a sharp, you raise it by 1/2 a step. And when you have a flat, you lower it by 1/2 a step. There are no flats in this book. So if I am to demonstrate that, if I want to demonstrate a sharp, you can see that second note I'm playing, that's sharp by 1/2 a step. I could also do it this way. As long as it's sharp by 1/2 a step up, then you have a sharp. Sometimes there's different ways of playing it as well. So 3, you would count that as 3 like it was a measure. 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3 and, because those are 8th notes, 1 beat, 2 beat, and this 2 is the 3rd beat. 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. The 2 rests, remember these are quarter rests. So, and that's the fine. So we're about finished for this book, I think. I had maybe a couple more things. If I need to, I'll bring it in next time. But basically, we finished all the things that I want to do. And if you can remember some of the things I've said, I may review next time. And that will give you a real heads up in reading music. I really do like this book. It's a children's book. There are some things I wouldn't do, but for the most part, it's really very good in teaching. So we're going to close it here, and I'm going into fingering charts next time. And I'm going to show them to you, and I've done some myself. So we'll be doing fingering charts and how you read them next time. It's important because it shows you how you figure your notes so you know how to play them. Music is very complicated sometimes. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.